Hello, heroes of Aeternum. On the last broadcast of Aeternum Awaits, we discussed some predictions I have for future content that will possibly include new cultures that will be added soon into the New World game. And I have found additional clues to support my ideas on the storyline of who might be getting added to the game. This could lead to us having a greater understanding of where the devs are taking things next, both on the map area, such as Ebonscale Reach in the new edition of the Chinese and the Empress, as well as potentially in the new dungeons and expeditions. Now, groups that I had mentioned previously that traveled the world extensively were the Chinese, the Japanese, the Polynesians, the Phoenicians, the Irish, and the Knights Templar. After watching one of New World's most popular promotions, as I scanned through the footage, I noticed that they were using maps and they were using travel patterns that go from mainlands all over the world, reaching Aeternum, and I started to realize that these might be roadmaps to give us a clue about which cultures might be the most likely to be the next ones added into the game. I think when you see the evidence yourself and you see where some of these major population hubs are from civilizations that traveled extensively pre-Columbus, I think the evidence will speak for itself. So let's go ahead and watch the promotion, and then I'm going to break it down for you and see if you see the same thing I do.
Tell me, have you witnessed their power? I have. We've all heard the legends. Every child has heard the legends of the cursed sea. The stories of ships vanishing without a trace. How many have been lost over the years? Dismissed as fantasy. The nobles, the church. They all knew the truth. Something out there was growing. Something terrible. The threat grows once more as the bourgeoisie slumber. Your ship is stocked and your crew assembled. We can pretend no longer. Left unchecked, the veil will surely fall, and all will be lost to madness and ruin. This corruption must be stopped.
Wow, what an amazing introduction to what New World is all about. So the story ties into something going on in the Bermuda Triangle. And even in the real world in the 1600s, by then they already knew that ships were disappearing there. And it was a scary place to travel. And so in this version of the story with New World, they're basically saying that there is an evil there is a power there that must be stopped. And I wanted to show you some things, some highlights that talk about why the travelers are going to New World, because they're actually there trying to contain the evil. Because the veil, as the monk calls it, is not going to be able to constrain the corruption much longer. So let's take a look again at that short part of the clip.
How many have been lost over the years? Dismissed as fantasy. The nobles, the church, they all knew the truth. Something out there was growing. Something terrible. The threat grows once more as the bourgeoisie slumber. Your ship is stocked and your crew assembled. We can pretend no longer. Left unchecked, the veil will surely fall, and all will be lost to madness and ruin. This corruption must be stopped.
So we also see that the monk is frustrated both with the rulers of the earth and the church itself for not dealing with the corruption at Aeternum. And so here he is launching his own expedition to try to conquer the corruption. But as you were watching that, there were a bunch of clues dropped about which regions of the world had actually gone to Aeternum to explore. Did you catch that at all? Because if you take a look carefully at the map, you will see that some of these cultures I've been talking about, like the Irish, like the Knights Templar, and others, are clearly showing voyages that were launched from those regions where those people are from to Aeternum. So let's take a look at the map and see what it has to say. If you look over to the right, from southern Portugal, there's a trip that just arrived to Aeternum. Now from Ireland and the UK, and then the third one came down the middle from western Spain, southwestern Spain, and then here comes the journey that they're wanting to go on now. And so these three regions speak loudly. Now I don't want to talk too much about the Irish, but I do want to talk a whole bunch about the Knights Templar, because it's my belief that it's potentially true that they could have come from any one of those three areas, and I'm going to explain to you why. And I also think that they would be absolutely the best group to add from this point into the game. The Knights Templar would have absolutely been interested in containing corruption or evil. That was part of what their mandate was from God. And they were also complete badasses that weren't afraid to go to battle with anyone, anywhere. So if the Knights Templar are going to be added, then in the game I would expect that it would be that they arrived at Aeternum sometime shortly after 1307. And the reason is, storyline wise, that on Friday the 13th in October 1307, King Philip IV of France and Pope Clement V, they combined to take down the Knights Templar. They arrested the Grand Master and they charged him and the Order of the Knights Templar with heresy, sacrilege, and Satanism. They tortured a bunch of the Knights Templar that they captured, and they forced the Templars, to confess. They burned some of them to death and disemboweled them. It was awful. And anyway, Philip IV of France, the reason he was after them was because he owed them a whole bunch of money he was never going to be able to pay back. And they also were so popular at that time that the Pope had some resentments towards them as well, because they're getting more powerful than his branch of the faith. And so between the money that was owed to the king and the prestige that the Pope was jealous of, they came together and made mass arrests and executions of Templars across France and the rest of Europe. The Templars did have spies, however, and so they got wind of what was about to happen shortly before it happened. And many of the Knights Templar escaped, and the vast majority of them headed to Portugal and Spain, right into those areas that we just saw on the map. ended up taking journeys to Aeternum, according to the storytellers of New World. And so I was very excited to see the transportation lines go from those regions of Spain and Portugal to Aeternum, because to me it was like a beacon going off that stated the Knights Templar are about to get added to this game. By the way, in regard to that northern route that it showed arriving at Aeternum from the United Kingdom, it looked like it was coming from Ireland. I'm not sure. It could have been Wales. But anyway, some of the Knights Templar were also seen going up to Scotland, and they went up there. That's part of the whole Da Vinci Code storyline, and then eventually they went to Iceland and Greenland and to the New World, uh, possibly even after dumping off a bunch of treasure at Oak Island. And don't forget, in our last episode, we also went over some of the weapons that are being seen in game that look very similar to things the Knights Templar used, as well as clothing and armor. And just recently, they did a fashion show of some of the new gear that's coming into the game, and some of it looked very Knights Templar in style, and so it would make a lot of sense to, mimic some of the things that are coming into the game based on the weapons and other cultures that are, have already been added. There was another interview with the dev that I wanted to talk about. Again, it was Robert Chesney that was interviewed, and he had an interesting comment that I thought that would tie into all of this future content discussion. And what he said was, as players explore Aeternum, they'll meet characters from countless cultures who have arrived on the island during different ages. While many have only vague recollections of how they arrived or how long it's been, this would suggest that the island might not have always been located in the Atlantic Ocean. If it does move, however, the mechanism and purpose of this functionality is also something that remains a mystery at the current time. And I thought that was interesting, and I really didn't think there was a need for Aeternum to be able to travel around the planet, but it could be part of a black hole, a dimensional portal, and that could explain why it would be so easy for different cultures to find the island. But to me, based on the era of the game and how many ancient civilizations traveled well before the 1600s, I thought it just made a lot more sense that the people came to Aeternum, not that Aeternum came to the people through some black hole or dimensional travel. So that's it for Aeternum Awaits, Episode 2. I hope you enjoyed it. I did want to say that I have been absolutely overwhelmed by all the feedback I've received on Facebook, Reddit, and on Discord regarding our discussions just from part 1 of Aeternum Awaits. The show has received almost 1,500 views in 4 days and a whole bunch of feedback, the majority of which has been very well received. I want to thank all of you that have reached out to me with discussion, support, and even ideas for other ways the devs might be adding future content. I think that's what shows like this are all about, is discussing the game that we love and trying to figure out what the devs might have in mind on that future content. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in New World.